And this was sort of in that vein of why it's dangerous to base your entire faith upon miracles. Not that they're a bad part of your faith, but just to base your entire faith. This is a dialogue between Jay Dyer and a Catholic on some of the miracles.
Unmute.
Hello?
Yep.
Hey, I've been on before, but last time I was on, this was I guess a few weeks ago.
Yeah, the cops are after you still, dude.
Yeah, I got interrupted by the police last time. So, I was talking last time about exorcisms in Catholicism.
Uh-huh.
And I guess you brought up Deuteronomy and how there's kind of like, basically miracles aren't sufficient to validate a
Yeah, let me give an example. So I just read the Rosicrucian chapter in the Cambridge Companion to Western Mysticism and Esotericism, and the founder of Rosicrucianism claimed to be an incorruptible. So should I be a Rosicrucian?
The founder claimed to. No, I don't think. Well, I think the argument I was making took a little bit more development, and to be fair, I didn't articulate it very well, and I guess I should probably formalize this and lay it out as premises to make it easier.
So wait, Sai Baba claimed to have a lot of miracles. Should I be a Hindu?
Well, it depends on the miracle.
Oh, so we just tack on more and more arbitrary. So how do we know that that's the thing that proves it?
Well, I think there's some miracles that are kind of like magic tricks, and there's other.
Oh, okay. You don't see how silly this is?
I don't think it is silly.
Right, I'm sure you don't. Yeah,
because I think someone being freed from demonic oppression is intrinsically good.
You're missing the point, though, because while it's true that somebody being freed from that oppression is good, me hearing a bunch of different claims does in no way tell me which one's the right one.
Right, but I just in the instance in Deuteronomy, though, for example, that's an instance where the prophecy actually does come to pass, but because they lead them after other gods, they're still a false prophet, right?
Right.
So in that case, I'm just saying that that's an example of something that might appear miraculous that maybe isn't sufficient, and I think there's other miracles.
So do you understand that you're basically just, every time there's a problem for that position, you're just qualifying it, saying that miracle doesn't count, or that sign or omen doesn't count, and you arbitrarily said, but this specific type of exorcism miracle is the one that proves it. That's all arbitrary, bro. Why?
I guess the way I came to this conclusion, this is actually how I became Catholic, not how I try to justify it looking back. And the reason it persuaded me anyway is because
Jay does this where he gets incredibly tired of people talking to him in 2 minutes, but he streams for 3 or 4 hours only talking to other people. So this is the way most of his clips end up.
For me,
the bad arguments persuaded you, correct?
No one argued this. It was just me reading the Gospels. It convicted me because it seemed that Jesus believed that was very strong evidence and condemned the Pharisees for rejecting it. But you're
missing the point, though. The miracles attend to the true faith, but how do they necessarily prove the true faith when we're all in a position of hearing countless different miracle claims?
So, can I ask you why would it have been wrong for the Pharisees to use your argument from Deuteronomy to reject Jesus since he claimed to be God?
Because that's why Jesus goes to great lengths to prove that he's not in contrast to anything in the Torah.
I don't.
You understand? Look, when Jesus, with the guy who's in Abraham's bosom, Jesus says, even if one rises from the dead, they won't believe. This refutes you. The very thing you claim, even more powerful than an exorcism, would be a resurrection. And Jesus says, even with a resurrection, they're not going to believe. Why? Because they have Moses and the prophets, and if they won't hear Moses and the prophets, they're not going to believe though one rise from the dead. That refutes your whole position. Now hold on. So in regard to Jesus' attitude to the Old Testament, he doesn't just do a miracle to say that, look, who cares about the Old Testament? Here's a bunch of miracles and signs and wonders. In fact, he actually criticizes everybody asking for miracles and signs and wonders because he says a faithless generation seeks signs and wonders. And he says the only thing that will be given to it is the sign of Jonah. Rather, he argues constantly that he is the fulfillment of the text, the prophecies. So he puts text and prophecy first and miracles second. You and all the other Roman Catholics put miracles first, and you miss the whole fallacy of why this doesn't work. And I asked you, I think last time, if the Coptics have Mary appear to thousands of people, why does that not prove Coptic theology?
Well, I just want to. I'll concede very quickly that.
He gets so paid so fast. It's entertainment.
Why
I don't
does
know.
he do this
People
to
just.
himself?
Yeah. Well, but I think he cuts right to the chase. Basically, it's like Miracles can be good, great, fantastic. We don't even deny miracles. We don't say that they don't happen, even if they happen outside of what you claim to be the one true church, because you have the example where Jesus tells his apostles, like, we see other people doing miracles. If they're not against us, then they're for us, that sort of thing. But you can't just base everything on miracles, because then, some crazy Hindu guy is going to say, well, look, I've healed 1,000 people in a night. Believe me, I guess. Right. And even if you have like some really good evidence for some of these miracles, if they are pushing you away from the Word of God or the one true church or whatever it might be in your specific paradigm, I would be very wary of them. So, which is why when I look at like Catholic miracles or Orthodox miracles or really any miracle, I think great, awesome, but also I have that. I don't want that to be my cornerstone, is basing everything off the miracles.
No, yeah, that's fair.
Yeah. So I don't know if you guys want to go through the rest of this clip. It is very entertaining, but if you guys want to move on to something else, James, if you want to get back to philosophy and etymology, we can go back if you'd like.
Hey, if this is entertaining, I'm good with it. The only thing I would add is that I disagree somewhat with Jay's take that this person is convinced by unreliable arguments or bad evidence. I mean, because I think that we need to separate the psychology of conversion from the justification for it. I think that very often certain things convince us that won't necessarily convince other people, but that doesn't make it an illegitimate belief, because ultimately all knowledge, period, and I can prove this. I hope to at some point show this pretty clearly. This is an argument that I've spent a lot of time formulating. All knowledge ultimately rests on faith, and the question really is what is the basis for your faith? What is the inductive reasoning for your faith? And miracles can absolutely be a part of the induction that leads us to accept certain presuppositions on faith that then lead us to other conclusions. And so, yes, miracles do not prove anything deductively, but they can be a part of the overall inductive evidence that leads us to adopt a certain set of presuppositions. And there's nothing invalid about that. So a particular miracle being particularly convincing to someone, being something that really affected them in their own personal reasoning, is not invalid, as long as they're not relying on that as some sort of syllogistic, this happened, therefore I must believe this. That does have issues. But if you're just simply saying that this is one piece of evidence that confirms this particular presupposition, and then from that presupposition I draw these conclusions, that's really the only way to validly think. And I think that miracles can be a part of that.
Yeah, and I think there's a huge emphasis on like personal miracles or things that happen. I'm not muted, am I? Okay, perfect. I was on the wrong screen. Yeah, but like again, people who like have cancer and have it cured, like just goes away one day, right? Like a huge effect on them personally. But can that be the foundation of everybody's belief? No, of course not.
Asian Massage Refuse says, incorrect. My knowledge rests on observation and experience. But this is the point. In the end, your observation and experience still have to be filtered through this process of faith. This is the induction. The inductions are abstracted from your observations and your experience, but you have to take on faith a lot of presuppositions that you can even rely on your observation and experience. I mean, how do you know that you're not just dreaming all of these things? How do you know that when you dream, that's not the real world, and this world that you're living is actually the dream? You take that on faith. Now, you have good reason to believe that, right? I mean, for one thing, just the sheer percentage of the time you spend in this world versus the dreaming world, and the constant changes in the dreaming world. There's all kinds of reasons why you can believe that this is the real world and that's the fake world. But ultimately, you can't prove that. You can't prove that, it's the Descartes idea of maybe we're just all being tormented by a demon in our head that presents the world as we see it to us. And we all have our own little demon. I mean, it's basically the simulation or the matrix. There's no way to conclusively prove that any of the things aren't true. They might seem preposterous to you, and there's all kinds of reasons to believe that they aren't true. I certainly don't think that we're living in a simulation, but you can't prove that. You have to just take on faith that your observations and your experiences are even valid, and in many cases they're not valid. And that's another thing that you have to abstract from the bad observations, the times when you thought you saw something but you actually saw something different. How do you deal with that? And you have to deal with that through by reconciling that with other observations and other experiences, and you start to abstract the more fundamental truths, and eventually the most reliable truths are the presuppositions that you hold at the very base level, your first principles, the postulates of your logical system. And then from there you can build syllogistically, you can build logically, deductively upon those. And so no one can escape this process, and everyone ultimately has to rely on certain presuppositions, and presuppositions by definition have to be accepted by faith.
Well, yeah, observation and experience are pretty meaningless, considering that like experience is based off of your memory, and memory is not a particularly useful or authentic terms of anything. And yeah, sometimes your observations are also just wrong. So it's like I don't know how you could base your worldview off of that and be like, I only sense data. It's like, oh, is your sense data always correct? No. Well, there's your worldview gone. Congratulations. Jay's face is me right now. We all have those moments.
That doesn't, because there's something else I wanted to say. One of the fulfillments that Jesus brings is the miracles that he does.
We already dealt with this. Did you not hear what I said? Oh my gosh.
But Jesus predicts that his followers will do the very same things that he did.
Okay, again, none of that proves your position. Again, miracles attend to true faith, and there are signs of it, but they cannot be the thing itself that proves it.
I mean, I would say that it's an indication that your biblical objections to Catholicism or other maybe you should reconsider them.
No, that's just another dumb representation of your position. That's an even dumber argument of restatement of your position.
Well, because if the Pharisees, for example, they believed their interpretation was correct, and on that basis they reject Jesus. Jesus said, "You search the scriptures."
Did you not listen to anything that I said? When Jesus refutes the Pharisees, he says, "A wicked, adulterous generation seeks a sign, seeks the miracles, like you. And none will be given to it but the sign of Jonah," which was what? A thing in the Bible, in the text. Rather, he says that though one rise from the dead, they will not believe. They have Moses and the prophets. Don't you understand that refutes you?
Don't you remember in John 3, Nicodemus said, "We know that you are from God, because no man does the signs that you do unless God is with him."
Correct.
So they were.
So the signs are indicators. No. The signs are indicators that he has that divine power. But the thing that Jesus himself uses is not the signs and the wonders. In fact, he says that signs and wonders are a sign of weakness of faith. You've missed the whole point. A faithless generation seeks signs and wonders, and you want to tell me that that's the way that we prove Catholicism as signs and wonders. So thanks for admitting that you're faithless.
No, I would say so. I would say that Jesus' words apply to like an atheist saying, "Give me a sign." Or if I were to,
he's not talking to atheists. No, he's not talking. That's totally not true.
He's talking to Jews who reject him, who are demanding.
They're not atheists, exactly, not Jews.
I know. But here's the thing.
So the context doesn't matter now to prove your position.
No. My argument to you is not, Jay, prove orthodoxy by doing a sign. I'm not demanding that you give me a sign. I'm telling you that there's.
Of course, we're not saying that. Nobody. Again, that's irrelevant.
No, it's not, because
it is irrelevant.
That would be relevant. That would be me doing what the Jews were doing that Jesus condemned them for, is demanding a sign. But I'm not demanding a sign. Instead, I'm presenting the signs that the Catholic faith brings.
You're missing the whole point. It begs the question, because signs and wonders themselves don't have any meaning without.
So this is something that I care a lot about, and like I said, I've spent a lot of time formulating this argument, and what Jay is doing right here is actually not great. He is conflating induction and deduction, and this is something that I care deeply about, because this is actually an issue that you will see throughout philosophy. Pretty much all philosophers do this at one point or another, where they will conflate induction and deduction. They will make an argument. Or in this case, so Jay is saying you can't prove Catholicism by what you're saying. You can't prove Catholicism from miracles. And the other guy's saying, no, I'm not trying to prove it deductively. I'm just saying that it's evidence, it's inductive evidence. And that confusion between induction and deduction is a perennial mistake that you will see in philosophy. And so it's just worth calling out, because you'll see it here, you'll see it in other debates for sure. Pretty much every single debate I've ever watched at some point makes this mistake, but you'll see it throughout the entire conversation of philosophy, where people will really neglect induction altogether, but when they and use this argument of you can't prove it from that when that's never what someone is trying to do. They're actually talking inductively, and someone will misunderstand them as talking deductively, and then use that to say they're either begging the question or they're making invalid deductions when they're never trying to make deductions at all. They're just trying to make inductions. And to go back to what he just said about begging the question does not apply. Begging the question is circular reasoning. When you assume your conclusion, begging the question does not apply when you include induction. Induction breaks out of the syllogistic, the purely deductive system, and now you are actually including information that is non-logical, that is coming from observation, from experience. It's not coming from within this chain of deductions, and begging the question is only a fallacy within your deductions. If you are arguing deductively and you assume your conclusion, then you've made a logical fallacy. But if you are including inductions that happen to relate to your conclusions, you're inducing from your conclusions, that's actually okay, because you are breaking outside of the syllogism. You're breaking outside of deductions. And so it's okay to include things that are part of your conclusions, to take your conclusions and feed those back into your observations and induce truths from that, and then build on those deductively. That's actually okay. That is not circular reasoning. That is not a fallacious way of thinking, and people will make that mistake all the time, where they will assume that someone is begging the question when really what they're doing is they're just taking their conclusions, using it to understand their observations better, using that to abstract their presupposition, get their presuppositions more fine-tuned, and then feeding that into the deductive chain. That's not circular reasoning. That's not begging the question.
Well, so I think I get where the Catholic's coming from, because he is trying to use the miracles as supporting of his beliefs, right? But I think Jay's refutation is simply that the miracles themselves don't matter. You can try and cite them as evidence, right? But it's the same thing. If he pulls up a Hindu source, if he pulls up a Gnostic source for a miracle, it's like, well, you can all claim miracles, right? So that's not a great basis for
they
your
don't
faith or
prove
trying
it
to argue for your position.
But they are evidence. They are evidence, and they're valid evidence, and they're evidence without begging the question. That's what I'm trying to say.
And well, yeah, I think I did tell James he needs to call in on Jay's show specifically for this reason. Yes, because it would make one fantastic content in and of itself, and it would be fun to then break it down later on to see how off the rails it goes.
I started watching his live streams just to kind of get a sense for how he argues.
Yeah.
So
well, did you watch his one from today?
Not today. No, I think I watched one on Saturday.
Okay. Yeah, but just whenever you feel like it, man, just get a topic, call in, and then I'll just clip it out, and we'll. Yeah,
I'm sure he'd make fun of me. I'm sure he would get upset just in the same way.
Don't give him a stroke, dude. Please.
Yeah.
The entire context of the paradigm. That's the point. You don't understand that?
I understand that, and I think that the context is Jesus predicted that those who believed in him would do the things that he did.
But that doesn't prove the position. You don't understand why.
I just don't think that it should be completely discounted.
I didn't discount it. I said that they attend the true faith. They cannot prove it.
But I think when you bring up Deuteronomy the way that you do, it seems that you're just trying to...
the way I do. How does Paul do it in Galatians 1?
In Galatians 1, well, there he says, if someone preaches a different gospel...
No, that's not all he says. That's not all he says. What does he say?
Yeah, he says, though we are an angel from heaven...
Yeah, so if an angel appears...
Right. Well... Okay, so you believe that me distinguishing between something like an exorcism and an apparition is arbitrary, but could you articulate...
You're just picking and choosing the miracles and the signs and the wonders that you want, and you can't even tell me why those are the ones that actually prove it. It's arbitrary. Stop being arbitrary.
Wait, do you genuinely believe I never explained why I think that they're different? Can you...
The argument that you gave was arbitrary, and it rests on the thing that's in question, because those are the miracles that the Ghostbusters in Rome have investigated and proven.
No, that's not the reason. It's because Jesus himself condemned the Pharisees and warned them about
that doesn't dude. That doesn't tell me that your criteria of the ones that count to prove Christianity, the miracles, and the ones that don't is true.
But okay, I would say that an angel that appears and preaches a false gospel to you is probably a demon. Would you agree?
That is the point. Correct.
Okay, but a demon cannot perform an exorcism, can it?
It's begging the question because number one, we don't even know if it's a real exorcism. Are you able to go? Listen, dude, you're missing the whole point. Are you able to go and investigate every claim of the Roman Catholic Church to see if it really happened? No. So you have to take it on the claims. And the point is that if I'm in a position of hearing 1,000 different claims, whether it's Sai Baba or whether it's the Coptic Church in Egypt, look, all I have to do is tell you, why does Mary's apparition in Zaitun, Egypt not prove Coptic theology? Tell me why.
I haven't looked into that particular example. However,
because it disproves your whole dumb argument.
But well, here's the thing. Also, I'm more, and I think Catholicism is more ecumenical than you. I mean, yeah, we're more ecumenical than you are, right?
As if that proves anything. All that proves is that you're more wrong than we are.
No, it means that I'm open to. They're not with us, but they're casting out devils.
My position can admit that there's miracles and exorcisms that occur outside the church. I just don't take that as a proof of which one is the true church, because what comes as the proof is, according to Deuteronomy 13, Deuteronomy 18, Galatians 1, the text and the message, not the signs and wonders. And you just bypass every time I quoted to you, a wicked and adulterous generation seeks a sign and a wonder. You argue that that's the thing that proves the true church.
Well, I think that it's a misapplication of that. And the
How is it a misapplication?
Because the rising, well, when it comes to the text about rising from the dead, the issue there is people neglecting the poor, not people differing on a
no, again, that's not what the passage in part is about, the fact that the guy didn't help the poor. But he says, if I rise from the dead, my brothers will believe. Jesus says, though one rise from the dead, they will not believe.
Right. Because,
that refutes you.
But the issue is, do you think that the problem with the rich man was that he had errant theology, or that he was...
None of that has anything to do with the point about the miracle itself. You're just deflecting off into the moral of the parable, which is not primarily what we're talking about right now, which is, does a resurrection convince a person to believe?
Well, here's, okay, your tag
Dude,
argument...
so now we're going to go to tag, because again, you're missing the whole point.
I'm not entirely... I mean, Christ is, in that parable, Christ says, you could raise from the dead and they wouldn't believe. That doesn't necessarily mean that they shouldn't believe. He's just saying that wouldn't convince them psychologically, not necessarily that shouldn't be something that would convince them. I think that he's really condemning them for not believing on the basis of something as obvious as they should have.
He's condemning them because, as he says, they have Moses in the law. Like, they have that already. Right. And he's talking to Jews in this circumstance, like, of course they should, like, I am physically here, right?
So I almost feel like Christ is saying they should have been convinced by these things. Yes, they don't prove it, again, deductively. And this is where, if you just started using the term deductive and inductive in your day-to-day conversations when you're talking philosophy, it would clear up so much, because I feel like these two guys are just talking past each other completely in terms of which type of
I feel like that happens a lot, too.
It does. Yeah. It does.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, this is something that I care about a lot. I really feel like if people would just start to clarify whether or not they're talking about inductive evidence or deductive evidence. I don't even like to call deductions evidence. I think evidence makes more sense to just refer to evidence as being inductive. But
well, so you're talking about deductive like inference almost.
Yeah. Well, same thing. Deduction, inference, syllogism, all synonyms, all referring, logic, all referring to this sequence of inevitable, necessary conclusions that must follow from a set of premises. And logic is helpful in terms of clarifying the knowledge that we have from the collection of evidence, from the collection of observations and experiences that we have. We can make abstractions and inductions from this wealth of observation that leads us to have certain presuppositions that we have to accept by faith, and then from there we can do deductions, syllogisms, inferences, and those conclusions must necessarily follow, if they're done correctly, from our presuppositions, but we still have to take our presuppositions on faith, which means that we could be wrong if those presuppositions are wrong. And it makes the deductions somewhat, like, they're helpful in clarifying a particular perspective, but ultimately all of the prerequisites for any conclusion that comes from a logical process has to be contained in the premises. Any conclusion, all of the actual information that's there must already be contained in the premises. If you look at Euclidean geometry, all of the conclusions that follow, there are hundreds of conclusions that follow from 10 axioms, but all of so that's the kind of information you get. You can get these hundreds of conclusions, but the information is already baked in to the 10 axioms. So whatever learning you're doing, it can be real learning, but it's clarifying. It's making it sharper. It's making the information sharper and clearer and more easy to use and apply. But you're not actually adding any new information into the system. You only get new information when you accept new axioms or new premises, and that can only be done on the basis of induction.
Sweet. Should we finish out this clip, or do you want to move on to another topic?
Let's we can finish this. It's what, a couple more minutes? I want to see him crash out.
It's like a minute and a half left.
Yeah.
Now listen,
Making an example.
listen.
Giving an example.
Again, you understand the easiest way to refute this is Zaytun Egypt, and that's why you keep going away from it. You don't want to talk about it. Thousands of people in Egypt. Thousands of people in Egypt claim that Mary appeared in Zaytun, Egypt over the Coptic Church. Why should I not be a Coptic?
Because
Silence.
God can perform miracles in other churches.
But dude, are you like a 20 IQ? Seriously, because you just argued that Roman Catholicism is proven by these types of signs and wonders. Now you're saying God can perform the miracles at the Coptic Church, but it doesn't prove Coptic theology.
There's a few qualifiers, but
that's arbitrary. So now you get to tack on the things that. So in other words, miracles don't prove it. We need all this other stuff that's arbitrary from you.
This is unfortunate.
Exactly. I can't think.
He kicks him out. Yeah.